By far and away, the most important time of the year to be utilizing your waiver wire is right now, the beginning of the season. By the time we get to the end of the year, we'll know who the good players are. We'll know who the bad players are. There's not going to be much value to be found. But every single year at the beginning, you do find those guys coming off the waiver wire that give you top 15 finishes at the running back position, that give you top 15 finishes at the wide receiver position. I think we have a couple players with that kind of upside on this list. So let's go through. Let's talk about our top 5 waiver wire wide receivers for week 3. Of course, we'll have some honorable mentions just in case these players aren't available for you. And we will also have some tight ends because I know your tight end room is a complete wreck. But before we dive into it, make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video if you have not done so already. Subscribe to the channel. I owe everyone a massive thank you. Past 111,000 subscribers. I'm going to live stream every single day to answer all your questions. And if you can't come out to a live stream during the day, make sure you just leave any questions you have down there in the comment section. I'm going to reply to at least, and I repeat, at least 200 comments on this video. One more thing, this video is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. When you go sign up for Underdog Fantasy, you can check out all these cool player props. Not only do you have those player props, but at the same time, when you use promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. You'll get our 2022 fantasy football rankings, and you'll be able to get into drafts with us on the live stream. We are still doing best ball drafts during the season. I'm sure you've seen us doing those as we're answering questions. So if you want to draft with us, check out those player props. Use promo code FLOCK, and they'll match that first deposit. But let's go through. Let's dive into our first wide receiver here. I don't think I need to waste your time. It's Garrett Wilson. I mean, with Garrett Wilson, we talked about him on our waiver wire video a week ago because after week 1, we looked at him and said, okay, well, we knew this was an elite wide receiver prospect coming into the NFL draft. I mean, if you go back to his time at Ohio State, guys, it is the craziest thing ever. Really, the only other time I could ever remember seeing something like this was maybe Alabama back in 2019, where Alabama in 2019 had the combination of Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, Devonta Smith. I mean, that wide receiver room was loaded. But we have something very similar here at Ohio State, if not a better wide receiver room, where in 2020 at Ohio State, you had Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, who is the #1 wide receiver in the 2023 draft class, Chris Olave, who is the #11 pick in this year's draft class, and Jameson Williams, who is the #12 pick in this year's draft class. A ridiculous wide receiver room where Garrett Wilson was able to go out there and he was able to dominate as a true sophomore at an incredibly young age, make Jameson Williams go out there and transfer to Alabama because he couldn't beat Garrett Wilson out. We saw him week 1 with only 41 snaps, almost seeing Elijah Moore doubling him in snaps, but Garrett Wilson out-targeted Elijah Moore week 1. We see the same thing this week, where Garrett Wilson, 14 targets, 8 receptions, over 100 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, including the game winner, with Joe Flacco at quarterback, with Elijah Moore having significantly more snaps, and Elijah Moore only 5 targets, literally about a third of what you had from Garrett Wilson. It looks like today, right now, he is already the wide receiver 1 for the New York Jets. I think we probably see Corey Davis cool off a bit. Maybe Elijah Moore can take that Corey Davis production, but he's not taking it from Garrett Wilson here. I mean, with Garrett Wilson, I am going to have a hard time saying that you could just jam him in your starting lineup week 3. But if you think that Zach Wilson can end up elevating this offense further than what you're going to be getting with Joe Flacco, this is a player with a lot of upside. But let's go over to a wide receiver that also dealt with some target competition early on in his collegiate career. Let's go over and look at Jahan Dotson. Now with Jahan Dotson, he also got the NFL draft capital this year. He was another first-round pick, and he does have a much worse prospect profile than Garrett Wilson. To be completely honest with you, he did not declare early for the NFL draft. He's an older prospect. He did not break out early. All those are massive red flags if we look at historical hit rates. But he has an excuse. He had to play with both KJ Hamler and Pat Frymuth early on at Penn State, where he was only 18, 19 years old. So it was very difficult for him to actually carve out a role in an offense that had that kind of talent. We'll talk about KJ Hamler a little bit later on here. But with Jahan Dotson, I mean, he's been fantastic so far through his NFL career. Obviously, a wide receiver that had 2 receiving touchdowns week 1 for the Washington Commanders. I mean, this was a wide receiver that automatically put himself on the radar. It was hard to go through and say to pick him up, jam him into your starting lineup, because you do have Terry McLaurin here. You have Curtis Samuel. You'll have another player we're talking about later in this video. You have a lot of target competition. However, Jahan Dotson, that did not stop him from going out there and putting up pretty much 16 fantasy points again this week. And I do not think we can start Jahan Dotson anytime soon. I think this pickup is going to be for that long-term upside that we have. But we need to see if Curtis Samuel manages to stay healthy the entire year. With Curtis Samuel, he is a very electric, a very dynamic wide receiver that has dealt with a multitude of injuries throughout his entire NFL career. If we were to see an injury to either Samuel or Terry McLaurin, even if it's completely random, that's how I think you get the league-winning upside from Jahan Dotson. But he should be a very good player almost regardless. Because, I mean, hell, he was a great prospect. In his first 2 games of his NFL career, he has 3 receiving touchdowns. Now let's go over to our third guy in this list, someone that you're not going to be able to play this week, not going to be able to play next week, but the long-term upside's there. Michael Gallup. So with Gallup, I mean, you are looking at a wide receiver room that is relatively empty behind CeeDee Lamb. Now I understand, yes, you did have Noah Brown with a fantastic day against the Cincinnati Bengals. 5 receptions, 91 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. But we know who Noah Brown is. I was rostering Noah Brown in Dynasty Leagues 4 or 5 years ago. He is legitimately nothing. Don't think that Noah Brown is a viable option here in Dallas. But Michael Gallup, on the other hand, is a wide receiver that back in his 2nd season of his NFL career had more targets per game and more receiving yards per game than Amari Cooper in the same offense. Like, Michael Gallup is a great talent. We saw the Dallas Cowboys give him this contract this offseason. And if we are going to go through and look at the timetable for his return, I think it may be pushed up a bit. Because with Michael Gallup, the last week, he got back to 7-on-7 drills and padded practices. First time since the torn ACL. So it looks like, in my opinion, they may get Michael Gallup back here in week 3. I think you may see Michael Gallup back in week 3, at the latest week 4, because remember, I mean, I think that they would have just put him on the PUP if he was going to be not making it back until week 5, week 6, week 7. So we're going to get to see Gallup in action either this week or the following. And I think that Dak Prescott does everything he can to get back right away. With this win for the Dallas Cowboys against the Cincinnati Bengals, now improving to a 1-1 record, this is going to allow the Dallas Cowboys to stay afloat, where I think Dak Prescott has the incentive to get back sooner rather than later and get this team a wild card spot. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas is able to sneak out another win sometime soon. Their next 2 games are going up against the New York Giants and the Washington Commanders. And then, yes, they are going to lose to the Rams. But after that, they go up against the Eagles, the Lions, the Bears. I think there's a decent chance that we are looking 3-4 weeks from now with the Dallas Cowboys at close to a 500 record, where Dak Prescott comes back a few weeks early, where this offense is elevated once again. And you have Michael Gallup here with that extreme talent profile. With the additional injury to Dalton Schultz, there are going to be a ton of targets available here in Dallas. But now let's go to our 4th option. This is someone that we want to play right now. Like, right now, he's going to be putting up significantly more points than Michael Gallup. Joshua Palmer. I feel like I'm cheating by putting Joshua Palmer on this list. I mean, rostered in 27% of leagues. If y'all don't know, on our waiver wire videos, everybody here has to be rostered in less than 50% of Yahoo formats. So yes, Joshua Palmer, 27% of leagues here. I mean, the man went through. He dominated this past week. 8 targets. He did get there with the receiving touchdown. I don't want to say he got lucky, but he had the volume. That's what we were looking for. You had the 8 targets. You had all the routes run for Joshua Palmer in Los Angeles. And there's an outside chance that Keenan Allen misses this week again. So if we have Keenan Allen missing week 3, and also a couple other wide receivers going down, like we said, Jerry Jeudy at the beginning of this video, I think that Joshua Palmer could be a viable spot start for you if we need to go through and plug in for one of those injuries. Long term, when we do get Keenan Allen and Mike Williams good to go, probably not going to be that excited about Joshua Palmer, but I think he could be a top 24 guy this upcoming week. And now let's go over to a player that is proving that a torn Achilles is not a complete death sentence. Sterling Shepard tore his Achilles in December. Week 1, he goes out there. He leads the Giants in receiving, 2 receptions, 71 receiving yards, and the receiving touchdown. Obviously, we have Wan'Dale Robinson hurt. Kenny Golladay gets straight up benched, where Galladay's no longer being used in New York. And also, looks like Kadarius Toney's going down that same path here. So there's really no wide receiver depth whatsoever in New York right now. And Sterling Shepard comes out. Sterling Shepard in week 2, yes, doesn't give you the same amount of points where he has that long receiving touchdown. But instead, what we see is the target volume. This is what I want to project going forward. This is what I want to get excited about. In a full BBR format, I think you can go pick up Sterling Shepard. He had 10 targets this past week. Now, I will say, when you have Wan'Dale Robinson healthy in New York, I'm going to be a little bit more concerned about Sterling Shepard, but at the same time, maybe Wan'Dale comes through. He takes it away from Richie James. I mean, he takes away, I can't even pronounce some of these names that logged receptions, that logged targets here from Daniel Jones in New York right now, because the entire situation is just so gross out of Saquon Barkley. And now let's go down to some honorable mentions. We have 2 honorable mentions at wide receiver, and then let's get to some tight ends here. First guy going to be Nelson Agholor. With Nelson Agholor, I mean, yes, massive week here. He had 6 receptions, 110 receiving yards, and the receiving touchdown. Like, if you have Nelson Agholor in best ball, congrats. If you started him in the DFS tournament, congrats. Obviously, you cannot be more excited about this. Now, I will say the reason he's an honorable mention, he's not a top 5 pickup for us, is this is a player that only had 34 snaps. He had 6 targets compared to Jacoby Myers at 13 targets. I think that we probably see him take some more snaps away from Devontae Parker, even though they do play essentially 2 different positions if you look at how they're utilized on the football field. I think with Agholor in best ball, very appealing option. He's going to have that field stretching ability. In deeper formats where you may get desperate, he's only rostered in 1% of Yahoo leagues. He's definitely worth a pickup, but just not over those top 5 guys. And then someone that's rostered in about 3% of leagues that has never been an extremely exciting option from a fantasy football perspective, KJ Hamler. Now, KJ Hamler, I love the guy. Trust me. I mean, I've been rooting for a KJ Hamler breakout for a very long time. Obviously, we had the Tim Patrick injury, getting KJ Hamler 1 spot up on that depth chart. And now Jerry Jeudy going down as well. We do not have the details of the Jerry Jeudy shoulder injury. This is going to be something that you have to continue to monitor before you make your official waiver wire claims to pick up KJ Hamler. But if it looks like you will have no Jerry Jeudy here in Denver for quite some time, KJ Hamler is going to be a player getting almost 100% of the snaps for the Denver Broncos, if not 100%. It went from being, in my opinion, what looked like one of the most dispersed offenses in the NFL between Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, to where now if we remove 2 of those guys, I think KJ Hamler can be a viable player. He was in that same draft class with Jerry Jeudy. He was the youngest player in that 2020 draft class. He got the NFL draft capital of a 2nd round pick. He was a very good prospect coming out of Penn State. I mean, he was productive. He played over Jahan Dotson at Penn State. He was a little bit older, though, to be completely fair. I think he's a very exciting option, and you're going to be an every down player when you were a good prospect running alongside Russ. I think that is exciting. Now, let's go over to a couple tight ends here. I know people are struggling at the tight end spot. And starting off with Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst has a couple reasons that I think we should be looking at him. He has no target competition at all. He had 56 of the 69 snaps here in Cincinnati. And at the same time, he had 39 routes run compared to the other 2 tight ends on this depth chart with a total of 4. Like, Hayden Hurst is getting pretty much every single route run at the tight end spot, and this is a very concentrated offense. I mean, going through, this is the perfect example of an offense that uses only 3 wide receivers with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. Beyond that, you don't have a wide receiver 4 here. You don't have a wide receiver 5 that you need to be worried about. So if an offense is going to be this concentrated, I think that we go through, I think that you pick up the tight end and assume that Joe Burrow gets better down the stretch, and he should be a viable play. I think he's going to be a lot better than someone like maybe Komet going forward. And now our next tight end, Logan Thomas. I mean, a lot of people thought Logan Thomas wasn't going to be playing for months. Tore his ACL, had some MCL and meniscus damage that had to get repaired in December. But the man, so far through the first 2 weeks, has had 11 total targets. And we remember that Logan Thomas has had that very high ceiling in fantasy football before. Now it's a very different situation where back then it was literally Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, and that's it. Where now you do have Jahan Dotson, you have Curtis Samuel taking targets away. So that is going to be slightly concerning, but I think Logan Thomas is worth a spot on your roster if he's drawing targets and is healthy. But I think that should be it. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment with any question you have. I'm going to answer at least 200 comments on this video. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell next to the subscribe button if you want to be able to come out to our live streams. We're streaming every single day until the season ends. But thank you again. I appreciate you. I hope we get to see you with the live stream tonight, and I hope you have a great day.